I think that the schools come from the perspective of, unfortunately, of creating more factory workers.
Well, that's what the school system was created around. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and all those people came together and created the education system for the Industrial Revolution, so that there was workers that knew how to tie their shoes, knew right from left, and could do remedial work. And I'm pretty sure on some level they realized that by ingraining society into this task-orientated way, it turned humans into chasing completion of tasks rather than living as whole embodied individuals and following themselves. It turned a society into a group of followers, and that's really what it's doing.
So you're healing yourself by healing your son.
Well, he's healing himself, right? Like I can't heal anyone for them. I can show them a way. I can show them a path. I can guide them. I do this thing called conscious parenting, which is very challenging in the world today. So it's more about what do you need and how do you need it, rather than this is how you're going to get it. So it's taking the extra step to raise adults and not just raise children, helping them to be self-empowered, self-inspired, self-accountable, responsible adults that this world doesn't have enough of, rather than following the system and just making them codependent and enabling their crap behavior because I don't want them to be in pain. So I'm shifting that perspective with them drastically. They call me out on my crap, I call them out on their crap.
Well, we're planning to talk about spirituality, and so when I thought about spirituality, I thought that you were probably the most spiritual person I'd talked to on LinkedIn. And I've talked to people who are very religious and all, and I think the reason I thought that was because you have a deeper understanding, um, and so that, I guess that's what religious is to me, or what spirituality is to me, is having a deeper understanding.
So, so for me, how I define spirituality is the journey of self-understanding. So it aligns perfectly with what you're talking about. Like that is really what it is because it's self-connection, right? At their core, every religion, at their core, not the building, not the construct, not the way that it's controlled right now, but at their root core, at their root core, what their principles and foundation are, it's all about self-reflection, self-accountability, living ethically, living morally. And then when I look at religions, I see expressing a lot of the same information and a lot of the same values, but with cultural relevance based on the culture that it was stemmed and created from. So, I mean, when I look at it, spirituality is just a journey of self-understanding. It's really simple. Like, and even corporate can understand that. The journey of self-understanding, right? Like, it's not too woo-woo. It's not, go meditate and learn how to levitate or, any of those things, right? You don't have to go live in the mountains for 20 years and disconnect from the world. Like, you can. And when you're raising three kids by yourself, some days it feels entertaining and feels interesting. But I don't think I can handle that. It's just too much. But it's the journey of going within and understanding ourselves and creating a deeper connection with ourselves. And that's really what it comes down to for me. I keep it simple. We love to overcomplicate things. And we have 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day anyway. What do I want to make it more complicated? Like, that's insane. I mean, I can bring up a calculator and see how many seconds are in a day. I'm pretty sure it's probably close to that. Seems crazy.
All right, great. Well, thanks for joining me today. Michael Padurano is guiding organizations to wholly embody their mission statement. and janitor to CEO, huh? It says on your title there. I'm really excited that you can join me for this conversation, Michael. Kind of as a precursor to hopefully our event coming up next month.
Yeah, I mean, I'm. Thank you for inviting me. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's exciting.
So, I call this podcast I have "Define Your Purpose," and I know that's something that you talk about a lot. Um, so, I'm kind of curious about, I guess, how you got started and what you're doing, and when you first realized that you should be doing something else.
Um, that's a very multi-layered question. So, I guess we'll take it one step at a time, right? Like, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm here to do, right? I know that my legacy goal is to elevate humanity through knowledge and understanding. Now, the steps to get there, that's the only goal I have in my life. I don't believe in goals because I believe that they create tunnel vision. So I create overarching lifetime goals, and everything that aligns within those values, then I'm open to doing. So for me, it's that's my purpose, that's my passion, it's everything that I'm about. I mean, I it took unlayering all the things I wasn't really to figure out who I was, and that journey started in 2018. I got sober in 2007. In 2018, I started finally doing the work. So I was sober 11 years before I started doing the work. Oh no, 2006 I got sober. Actually, I can't even do the math. Apparently, um, why do I think that is? Because one of the issues that I've noticed with the 12-step programs, at least when I was around them back in the very beginning for the first few years, is they didn't guide me towards healing the trauma and the root cause. So it was a lot of let's do this work, let's do the steps, let's do this. And I did it and I did it and I worked the steps and sponsored others and did all those things, went to the rooms, worked at a treatment center for 3 years. I did all those things, but I didn't ever focus on healing my root issues because at that time it just became another bypass to escape it and just avoid it. I mean, even positive things become escapism when you're doing it for reasons to hide from yourself.
So, what made you realize that that was what was happening and change that?
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother story. 2018, I was with my ex-wife. We just had our third child, and I was stranded in Arkansas with her, and I was miserable there for a year with her. And I told her I had to leave to go work on myself. I was miserable. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't do anything there. It was torture. And I went back to Florida and started working on myself and lived with a friend on their couch and or in their spare bedroom, whatever it was, and started to really look at myself. And first was listening to Gary Vee, then it was listening to David Meltzer, then it was listening to Ed Milet, then it was listening to Tom Bailu and the series of people, right? And just started to intake different perspectives and different ways of looking at life and thinking that there was hope for a change, like a space to move into. And then 2 years later, right before COVID, I found out that my kids were being abused. So I drove to Arkansas with $3.47 to my name. I was in South Florida and brought the physical proof with me and went to go fight for my kids. I got emergency custody March 6th of 2020. And 2 weeks later, the world shut down. So I was stranded there for 19 months fighting for my kids. I went there to save them and I accidentally saved myself because it was not my intent to save myself. It was my intent to save them. But the only way I was able to have the fortitude, the resilience, and the staying power to do that was to do the work on myself. And I started working with tons of coaches, I worked with a bunch of shamans, a couple priests, a rabbi, a bunch of psychotherapists, a whole bunch of coaches. And I just absorbed as many modalities of healing trauma as I could. And I started really doing the work. I worked with between 40 to 50 people in that 19-month period. and I just went rapid fire deep into healing. I mean, I spent 6 months pretty much crying and journaling every single day. And my kids were witnessing the whole thing while I'm there fighting for them. Um, One of the greatest byproducts of them witnessing my healing journey is that they know it's possible. Because at some point, they're going to have to heal from their trauma. My son, 11 years old, he told me that he wants to grow through his trauma. He doesn't want to escape it. He doesn't want to hide from it. Because I started drinking at 9, I started doing hardcore drugs at 12. He's like, I don't want to do any of those things. I want to heal. I don't want to hide from it. I don't want to numb it. I don't want to disappear from it. I want to face it. And that's what he does every day. And that inspires me to keep on going because it's like the most beautiful reminder in the world of the journey that I started and the journey that I'm taking and the gift that I was given by doing it with them being present.
That's great. That's great. So you're healing yourself by healing your son.
Well, he's healing himself, right? Like I can't heal anyone for them. I can show them a way. I can show them a path. I can guide them. I do this thing called conscious parenting, which is very challenging in the world today. So it's more about what do you need and how do you need it, rather than this is how you're going to get it. So it's taking the extra step to raise adults and not just raise children, helping them to be self-empowered, self-inspired, self-accountable, responsible adults that this world doesn't have enough of, rather than following the system and just making them codependent and enabling their crap behavior because I don't want them to be in pain. So I'm shifting that perspective with them drastically. They call me out on my crap, I call them out on their crap.
Hmm. I think accountability is a big one that with kids and people and some people never learn it. I think there's a lot of adults running around out there that
Yeah, I mean, you can put on any news. I mean, I haven't watched news in 3 years, but you can put on any news and you'll see every adult not being accountable. It's always blaming, shaming, and pointing fingers everywhere. I look at the world. So let's take a step back real quick. I look at the world as being in a reactive state. So I'm going to go a little bit into science real quick, if that's okay. Our mind averages 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Out of those thoughts, this is a University of Pennsylvania neuroscience study. So I can find it for you somewhere. I don't know where it went, but I remember the stats. So out of those 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day, which is a ton, an absolute ton, it means nonstop. Our mind just doesn't stop. So up to 95% of those are pre-programmed in our subconscious. So that means if you're not consciously aware and if you're not being reflective, then you're on autopilot all day, which means you're going to live in your patterns and behaviors and be reactive to trauma that happened much younger in your life, even if you don't remember it, because that's your patterns and behaviors. And then they say up to 85% of our thoughts on a daily basis slant to the negative. So, I mean, it's mind boggling that we don't slow down and that we're not reflective and that in school they don't teach you to journal, they don't teach you to self-reflect, they don't teach you to be self-inspired and self-empowered. They teach you to follow the leader and they teach you to follow rules and they want you to do it their way only. So it's there's systemic issues that put us in that position as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the schools come from the perspective of, unfortunately, of creating more factory workers.
Well, that's what the school system was created around. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and all those people came together and created the education system for the Industrial Revolution, so that there was workers that knew how to tie their shoes, knew right from left, and could do remedial work. And I'm pretty sure on some level they realized that by ingraining society into this task orientated way, it turned humans into chasing completion of tasks rather than living as whole embodied individuals and following themselves. It turned a society into a group of followers, and that's really what it's doing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, agreed. So how I'm wondering how you got your work going then, how you got um started into working with companies the way that you do, um, I see that you're um, the founder and guide of Inner Luminance, where you have a new program.
Well, now we have two new programs because I just created an individual one too. So basically, I pull everything from my own life. I use my life as a living example. So I'm a very business oriented individual naturally, but I'm not an operator. I do not like operating, but I love the visionary stuff, the creation, the building. I do not like operating. So I had a major stroke a year and a half ago. Three places in my brain, 86% chance I'd be a vegetable. I healed myself. Now, during this healing, I started really reflecting because I took 10 months off of everything to heal. And during that 10 months, I started truly reflecting on my steps in my process. Because I've been coaching and I've been a guide and I've been all these different things. I've been a spiritual guide basically my whole life. But I've been a life guide or a life coach, whatever you want to call it, for at least the last few years because of my personal experiences and the relatability there. And then I've been a business coach for over 20 years. So, because I started investing in companies at around 20 years old. Wasn't very good at it because I kept picking the wrong people because I would surround myself uh, with the trauma bonds around my trauma. So, I mean, these are the patterns and behaviors that we repeat until we don't. I didn't know any better. I don't blame and shame myself. It just, these are the lessons I needed to learn. So I learned a lot of the landmines for people to avoid. And that is really what I became a coach around, is how to avoid the landmines when it came to business, because I went through them all. I've had over 60 million stolen from me from bad business partners. I've helped create major programs, gotten corporate contracts, all different things. Government contracts, international contracts. I worked the United Nations Development Program, one of their organizations, for 4.5 years. I mean, I've done all sorts of stuff. So, like, and what I realized is I'm just natural when it comes to that. But what I am not is an operator. So when I was still in my trauma wounds and in a reactive space, I would attract partners that were nefarious, that had these ways of just wanting to take the role on that I didn't want, which was operator. And I would allow it because I didn't want it. And I would go against my intuition, which would say they don't have the best intent. But I didn't care because I didn't want to operate. So that's just where I left it, and that's what I did, and it led to being smacked in the face quite a few times. And the other part was I didn't want to be in the forefront. I didn't want to be I didn't want to be the person that created this. I wanted to hide behind teams. I wanted to hide behind other people. I wanted to hide behind groups because I didn't believe I was worthy of the spotlight. And that's a big, huge part of it. Today, it's different. After the stroke, I'm all good. Like, I'm ready for everything. Like, it's just, this is different. I mean, I'm grateful to wake up every day. I realize and I embody gratitude. I don't believe in gratitude. I'm not grateful. I embody gratitude. Waking up is a luckiest experience of your day because 150,000 people die every day. So when you start looking at life that way, it shifts everything. Everything changes around you because you're changing your whole perspective on it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. So, I wonder about your leadership program. Then is this sort of the kind of um, the founding of your leadership program is based off of gratitude, and this is what you teach.
Yes and no. It's shifting people from a reactive state to a responsive state. In corporate world, it's taking the whole organization from a reactive state to a responsive state. Because when you're in reactive, you have the snakes in the grass. You have companies that just put their mission statement and credo on the wall, don't embody it, don't believe it, don't live it. So the goal is to take organizations, move them back into embodying their mission statement and credo, while taking each individual in the organization, janitor to CEO, and helping them to embody their true core values beneath all the imposed beliefs. So it's the work of releasing all the imposed things and moving into a space where you start understanding your true core values and you start to live into that and then aligning that with the mission statement and credo. Because when you have a bunch of empowered people that live into the mission statement and credo, you're more like a startup. And in startup mode, everybody's inspired, everybody's excited, everybody wears many hats, everybody can handle anything because they're excited. They're in a space where they know why they're there and they know why it aligns to them. Corporate today, nobody has any clue why they're there. No one. All the way up to C level, even board of directors members have no idea why they're there. No clue. Because most of these organizations don't live into what they claim to. They put it on the walls. They have it's everywhere. It's in the bathrooms. It's over the urinals. It's over the stalls. It's on the back of the toilet, back on the back of the stalls. I mean, it's everywhere, but it doesn't mean they live into it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of culture that is very judgmental and attacking of the individual. Then from that, and that makes people just shut down their creativity, and then they're just not contributing to the greater good of the company anymore at all.
Well, and that's where the burnout comes in, and that's where sick days come in, and mental health days, all these different things. It's because people don't know why they're there, so they can't be passionate about it. They're always looking for their next job that takes 3 to 6 months, and then they get there and they realize they were sold a bill of goods that isn't real either. And it's the system itself is broken, and it needs to be reorganized. And the only way is to take it one organization at a time, but taking it one person at a time through that organization. So the authentic leadership program, which is the corporate program, takes groups of 20 to 25 people at a time, but does series of those groups can do up to 25,000 people a year within an organization. So it can do very large scale organizations as well. So it's scalable, it's everything. And then the next stage is to help me find an operator so that I don't have to do any of that. I can't stand it. I will until I don't have to. Till the right person comes along. And then the individual program is the same basic principles, but without aligning yourself to an organization's mission statement and credo. But it's the same exact concept. So I created the individual program and I call it the human recovery program because you're recovering your humanity. Because we're so far gone from our core of who we are. And it's okay. It's never too late. You can be 85 and want to shift, and that's fine if you're open to it.
Do you think that's part of the information age, that we're all drowning in all this information but can't find the the relevant stuff?
I feel like that's an excuse. I mean, I don't. So here's how I look at technology. Technology is an amplifier. That's all it is. It's nothing more than an amplifier. If Jesus had a YouTube, the whole world would be Jewish. If Muhammad had a YouTube, the whole world would be Muslim. So I mean, like, these people reached these magnificent things over the course of centuries because there wasn't connectivity. Today we have connectivity and we misuse it all day long. It's a tool. That's all it is. Since the stroke, my phone ringer does not go on ever. My laptop rings because Apple syncs whatever, but that's a whole different story. It drives me crazy. I don't know how to stop it now because I like getting the text message. I don't like the noise. But part of it is this is, I live by this. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. I'm trying to move the wrong direction. But if it costs your peace, it's too expensive. And I really feel like now if from this stroke, I realize what that is worth. My world is in chaos and it doesn't impact me because in my core, I know what I'm doing and what I'm living into. When things are amazing, that's awesome too. I have amazing presentations coming up this week, enormous government agencies, but it doesn't matter. It just is. I'm just living into my purpose. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm just not going to the extremes anymore. I'm not riding the waves. It's just, it's Gary V. This is one thing that I took from Gary V in the very beginning. If you let the positive noise impact you, then you're going to let the negative noise impact you because you're allowing the noise to impact you. Now, back then when I was listening to Gary V, what he didn't explain is from his perspective, growing up with a healthy parent dynamic, where his mother was loving, nurturing everything, his father was disassociated and disconnected. But the balance between the two of them created this perfect, harmonious upbringing for him. Now, I don't know if it did that for his siblings. He talks a little bit about it at times, but At the time, he wasn't explaining those details. So, like, that part of it truly stuck with me. If you let the noise in, then you're going to let all the noise in. Now, the way that he explains it is he goes a little bit deeper and he goes more into the personal side. And if you read his book, 12 and a Half, he's a completely different human than he was 6 years ago. Completely different. But it's amazing because then we all evolve and we all grow and we all shift. He must have had enough people say, well, I didn't have that life. How do I get there? I didn't grow up the way you grew up. How do I get there? Now, granted, financially, he came from nothing. So everything he's built. But we don't believe we can. We all want to follow someone else. We all want to emulate somebody else. So sharing our authentic stories is so important. And that's where social media is so empowering when we allow it to be. But we get so caught up in comparisons and the negativity and the drama and the misleading news from all angles. All sides of the news are misleading. They all want you to hear their perspective. That's all it is. But we take it on as our own because we have a level of attachment to it because we think everybody else knows better than we do. So my goal through these programs is to teach everybody that they are better than anybody else's source for their life. We are our own leaders. Nobody can tell us what's best for us. No one. I don't care who they are, because they aren't living our life. There's 8.1 billion perspectives, and they're all true to them. The audio room that you were in Saturday, right? Like, I always say that because I feel like we don't talk about that enough. We're so busy trying to, as you heard in the room, right? Like, most people were so busy having pissing contests from their perspective versus their perspective. As you noticed in my room, everybody has a perspective, and we all come and listen. We create this space where everyone is able to share their perspective without judgment, without getting attacked, without any. And that is what the world needs more of. Right now we think there's two wars in the world: Ukraine and Russia, and Israel and Palestine. What about the other 6 or 8 that we never talk about? What about China and Taiwan that's coming next? Why don't we talk about the things that really matter? Because right now they are focusing. First, it was focusing on Ukraine and Russia because Russia's the big evil. Now it's focusing on Israel and Palestine because you can easily pick a side. So they're just driving both narratives, and they are enraging the world, and that's all they're doing. Because the more we're divided, the easier we are to manipulate.
It's true.
I feel like I'm hijacking your show, my friend.
No, not at all.
I'm going on tangents.
Yeah, you make me think of all this stuff that all these topics we could be talking about. So,
My mind.
and I know
It's those 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day. I mean, I just happen to catch a lot of them through reflection.
So, and I know you just came out with a book in December also.
Yeah, that was the beginning of this program. Like, that was the first 3 workbooks. So the book I released in December was I wrote it because I wanted the world to have a way to heal if they chose to. It took me years to be ready to. So I wanted to put it out there so it was out there for the world to have in perpetuity. Didn't really promote it, barely did anything about it. I don't really care if it has sales. It doesn't matter to me. But if you want to do the work, it's there. It's a 6x9 paperback that actually has blank templates to do the exercises. So obviously in the world today, that's a very low sale because who wants to buy a book to do work? It's a very low option for people. But at some point in the future, that might be something they want to look at. So I put the book out there with my perspectives on each step of the process. And that was phase 1 of the programs I have now. Then I made 2 more workbooks on top of the 3 workbooks that are included in that book, made it more of a complete program. Then I created a corporate program, built it out a lot more with more exercises, more everything. It's a year-long curriculum for each individual employee. Then I had the opportunity to talk to governments and different interests, and that want to put me on this digital platform for individuals. So then I redid it again and put it on, put it on, put it into an individual program now. So it's going to be on that digital. It's going to be on that digital educational platform. So yeah, it's just the evolution. So yeah, the book is there. It has the first chapter is a little bit about my backstory. I tried to break it down very simply, not get too caught up in the details because there's so many of them. I mean, eventually that will be a book of its own when somebody wants to write it for me because I have no interest. Um, but like when I have a ghostwriter, will get done because I have no interest. And I have somebody that I'm working with. My publisher said that she would ghostwrite it for me. But I don't want to do it. Like the details don't matter. What matters is the experience and the lessons. The experience and the lessons. Because when I get too attached to it, then I move into that egoic space of creating inner imbalance to where, oh well, I've survived this, so I'm owed this, or I deserve this, or I deserve better. We deserve what we allow. It is that simple. If I allow somebody to abuse me, then I deserve it because I'm allowing it. And when we can take that level of accountability, nobody has power over us anymore. But like we said earlier, like the world doesn't seem to believe that anymore. It's just not a believed thing. So, but yeah, I mean that's the book, and that's where I'm at, and I'm speaking a little bit. I'm doing different things. Like we're going to be speaking on May 17th, I think. Is that the day? Pretty sure that's okay. So yeah, I mean, talk a little bit about that. Let's hear a little bit about that event.
Well, we're planning to talk about spirituality. And so when I thought about spirituality, I thought that you were probably the most spiritual person I'd talked to on LinkedIn. And I've talked to people who are very religious and all. And I think the reason I thought that was because you have a deeper understanding, um, and so that I guess that's what religious is to me, or what spirituality is to me, is having a deeper understanding.
So, so for me, how I define spirituality is the journey of self-understanding. So it aligns perfectly with what you're talking about. Like that is really what it is because it's self-connection, right? At their core, every religion, at their core, not the building, not the construct, not the way that it's controlled right now, but at their root core, right, at their root core, what their principles and foundation are, it's all about self-connection, self-reflection, self-accountability, living ethically, living morally. And then when I look at religions, I see expressing a lot of the same information and a lot of the same values, but with cultural relevance based on the culture that it was stemmed and created from. So, I mean, when I look at it, spirituality, it's just a journey of self understanding. It's really simple. Like, and even corporate can understand that the journey of self understanding, right? Like, it's not too woo woo. It's not, go meditate and learn how to levitate or, any of those things, right? You don't have to go live in the mountains for 20 years and disconnect from the world. Like, you can. And when you're raising three kids by yourself, some days it feels entertaining and feels interesting. But I don't think I can handle that. It's just too much. But it's the journey of going within and understanding ourselves and creating a deeper connection with ourselves. And that's really what it comes down to for me. I keep it simple. We love to overcomplicate things. And we have 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day anyway. What do I want to make it more complicated? Like, that's insane. I mean, I can bring up a calculator and see how many seconds are in a day. I'm pretty sure it's probably close to that. It's crazy.
Right. So your big motivator now is to reach as many people as you can and help as many people as you can.
That's it. That's simple. I keep it simple, right? Like, it's just, I can't imagine living any other way in my life. Money shows up when it's meant to show up. Everything shows up when it's meant to show up. Me trying to control divine timing is the biggest oxymoron in the world. Like, as humans, we sit back and we over glorify our experience. We're here for 80, 100, 120 years. That's not even a speck of dust on the planetary timeline. Stop pretending it means more than that. We're 1.2% DNA wise difference from a chimpanzee. Like, We're really not that special, guys. Let it go.
Everybody wants to be famous and remembered, and I think those are ego things. You mentioned before wanting to avoid ego.
Well, I want to avoid the imbalance. So, because to me, I look at every aspect of my life as a yin and a yang. To where there's the light, there's the dark, and it has to be balanced for it to be for it to align, to live in alignment. So for me, ego is the most important aspect of our human existence. Because without ego, we don't exist. That is our personal identifier for our higher power. Whatever your personal belief is, your personal higher power, your identifier for this experience is your ego. So I look at ego as the veil between us and our higher power. So we can't exist without it. You can't get rid of the ego. You can't kill your ego and not have it there. That's ego. By telling yourself you can do it is ego. The reality is you find a way to balance it and you understand when you're out of whack. Because we live in flow. Nothing is perfect. Having 3 kids, if it's taught me nothing else, it's definitely taught me that. Like there is no perfect. So when you're out of whack, you just got to realign. And that's where self reflection, compassionate self awareness, the desire to understand yourself, unconditional self love, all those things come into play. Because when you move into the blame, shames, and guilt, you've already lost the battle. You're just making it worse. You're amplifying it. So I keep it simple. I don't like to go. I mean, I could talk about this stuff for days. It's great. And I'm looking forward to the conversation on the 17th and doing that on the 17th. It's going to be a blast. But it's all based off my own experience. I only talk about what I live. Like talking about anything else doesn't make sense to me. There's many things in this world I have not done that I do not talk about. There's many things in this world I have done, and that's what I transparently share. And that's it. I'm not perfect. I've made more mistakes than maybe any other human being alive, and that's okay. My kids got abused because I left them. I needed to go work on myself, so I had no choice because I wanted to die. I was going to kill myself if I stayed. So I still, on a level, it took a lot of healing to forgive myself for leaving. But I also knew that if I didn't leave, I would have never have been able to go save them when I needed to. So, I mean, it all comes back to the same thing. You've got to unconditionally love yourself enough so that you can love others. You got to believe in yourself enough that you're willing to take the leap. And spirituality is truly just a journey of self understanding. Because all these different spiritual practices, the religions, all of them, whatever it is, doesn't matter what kind it is, any of it, it's all about understanding yourself deeper. That's all it is. Keep it simple. Why are you making it complicated? Why are you worried about labels? Oh, labels is another topic we could talk about for days. Because we over glorify the use of them too. And then people live into the labels and use them as cop outs and excuses. I'm ADHD, that's why I'm always late and I never have everything done right.
Yeah, especially genetics or biology. Oh, it's in my family, so I must be. I have to do that.
Or they use a diagnosis to define them too. Like, oh, I am whatever the diagnosis is, and it's like it's not who you are. It's just part of your being. It's not who you are though. Like, I'm not a father, I'm not a brother, I'm not a son. I'm me. I am all facets of everything. I'm not one of them. We like to divide ourselves. We like to break it down into personal and business, and we like to put ourselves in boxes and categories. And that's just not the real world. We're multifaceted beings that cover over amount of roles in our life. They are just roles, but they don't define us. What defines us is the character and the integrity that we live our lives with. It's the actions. Love is a verb. All these things are true. I mean, like, how do you love yourself? How do you show yourself love? How do you show others love? Do you listen before just speaking? Do you pay attention? Do you understand? Do you want to understand? Or do you just want to hear yourself? Because that's the whole other thing.
Right. I think that energy, an exchange of energy, is something that maybe we used to understand a long time ago, maybe before written history in other cultures that we don't anymore.
Mhm.
Maybe you'd like to.
I look I look at it as pre-known history, right? Like you want to talk about Atlantis, you want to talk about Lemuria, you want to talk about those other things. Like I mean, we could even go back to Pangea. We can talk about all these different times, places, 2 to 300 million years ago, just not known history, right? Now, I believe and I've seen that these things are all real. Doesn't matter what anybody else believes. Everybody has to have their own beliefs. They have to have their own experiences, their own understanding, their own perspective. I don't care if anybody believes. Don't matter to me. I know I believe. You're not going to tell me different because I believe it. And that's what we need to understand to be more human about. Energy is everything. I mean, frequency is everything. You can look at the Asian studies and the Yao and Yin and Yang and Buddhism, and you go back and you go, what are some of them called? I can't even think of them off the top of my head right now. So some of the energy, the Chi, Taoism, like it all discusses energy. That's all it is. Even Freud discussed energy, but he was misunderstood as this weird mother son relationship. But because it's people just see things for what they how they perceive it, and then they create a judgment around it, rather than saying what is he really trying to explain, and what couldn't he explain at the time? Because if he would have talked about shamanism back then, because really what he did was shamanism. If you really look at it, and you look at psychotherapy and shamanism, it's almost identical. So many of the practices are almost identical. But that's the Eastern world versus the Western world. That's what they consider first world versus third world, right? Like, we claim that first world is better, but community in third world is so much tighter. There's love, there's communal, there's coming together to be together, to support each other. I don't know. What sounds better to you? First world just sounds like it's a manipulated label that they use to keep us in line. And I personally believe that third world is just something that's not under their control. Whoever's controlling it, the powers that be, the 1/10%, because it's not the 1% anymore. It's 1/10 because of the finance disparity. It's getting so much worse year over year. So it's more like 1/10% that controls the world, not 1% anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, right. Well, I think you attract what you put out too, as far as energy, and you get back what you give. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, right?
So here's the thing: whatever you call your higher power, I don't care what it's called, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, whatever you want to call it, right? It doesn't matter to me. You want to call it creator, divine, source, anything, I don't care. When you give, you need to give from a place of being unconditional. No conditions. I expect this back from you. Because what happens is, whatever your higher power is, gives it to you in different ways. It very rarely comes back from the same way. But as humans, we like to say, well, you owe this to me because I did this for you. And then it takes away the energy and it becomes transactional. And that is where humans get lost. The labeling, the tying things, the conditional love. I mean, the whole world is tied up in conditional love. I was raised in conditional love. You get this job, I love you. You get these grades, I love you more. You go to this college, I love you more. You get this degree, I love you more. If you're this accomplished, I'll love you more. I'll buy you a car. I'll do all these different things. There's always conditions, and that is a lot of what I believe is, in many ways, torn down society. The conditional love versus unconditional. There's not a single religion that talks about being conditional. There's also not a single religion that talks about killing other religions. Now, in the Muslims' defense, the Roman Catholics did it first. They were the worst, and still to this date, the numbers of people are still worse for Roman Catholics. They raped, pillaged societies. They took over places, colonized them, and said you have to be Catholic. And that's what they did. They took things over. There was the Inquisition. There was all these different things. So, I mean, I understand that radicals are radical and it's horrendous. It's horrible. There are innocent people dying all over the world every day from good and bad people. We just want to look at a circumstance for what we can see and then judge it based on that. I'm not there. I can't tell you what's really going on. Haven't been impressed in that way, so I can't tell you how it feels. Like, this is what we want to take this on. We want to go start riots. We want to go start sit-ins. We want to go be heard, seen, and valued, because we're not heard, seen, and valued anywhere else in our life. So we want to get radicalized behind something, anything. Doesn't matter what it is, good or bad. We need something to fulfill ourselves. I would encourage people to look within for it and stop going external to fulfill yourself. It just doesn't make sense.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. And I think it's important to think for yourself and not follow orders, because all the people who are doing all these terrible things in the world are following orders all the time and not thinking for themselves.
So, yeah, I mean, but everybody's a follower, right? Everybody does what somebody else wants them to do. And but then again, that means no accountability, because we don't want to be accountable, so we're always going to push the buck to somebody else. We're going to need to have somebody to point at. So
So you have to fit that into the corporate structure, though.
that's a lot of the issue. There's no it's a very controlled and it's a very controlled environment. Let's put it that way. So it's I have to have power over you. It has to be hierarchical. It has to be you have to answer to me, because my ego, I need to know that I'm being answered to. I need to know that I'm right. And then what happens is everybody starts chasing what others want from them. Never once do they pause and say, what do I want for myself and how do I fulfill myself? And that's well, nobody's going to contribute anything until they know what they're contributing to. If they don't know why they're even there and what they're living into and what their purpose within it is, that's why it's simple about taking it back to the mission statement and credo, understanding what the organization is, and then helping each individual understand how to live in their values within it. And that's why it has to start there, because nothing else changes until that. People aren't going to change if they don't even know why they're there. They're not going to want to do work. They're not going to want to be a part of it. They're not going to want to do anything. They're also not going to do. They're also not going to do it if your 6 layers of upper managers above you aren't doing the program because they think it's beneath them. So they're not going to do it either. It's got to be whole organizations. You need to literally have janitors and CEOs sitting in the same room saying, how do we come together to make everything better for everyone, not just one person? Like, lose these labels, these taglines, these DEIs, these DEIB, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging now. Like, they created a new letter so that people have new job titles. Oh, good. Now we have a chief belonging officer. It's like, right, like, so all you're doing is creating more steps on the totem pole, but you're not accomplishing anything. It's absolutely insane to me. But everybody's got to get there on their own time. I could just create things and allow people to do what they want to do.
Right. Well, I mean, if someone wants to get a hold of you, or find your book, or maybe has questions about anything we've discussed today.
They can Google search my name. I'm the only one in all of existence. I'm the only one on the planet, because my grandfather, out of his siblings, there was only one other that had the R in the name, and all his other siblings, when he came to Ellis Island, left the R out, because that's the original spelling, is Padurano, without the R. So they added an R to him and one sibling. So I am the only Michael Padurano in all of creation right now.
Neat.
It's pretty cool. I love mistakes. Mistakes are brilliant.
Right. Um, Great. Well, I'm really looking forward to our discussion. Less than a month now.
Yeah, on May 17th. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today. Good luck with everything you're working on in the organization there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm building. I'm just building and growing and allowing space for things to fall in place.
Right.
I'm releasing control of the process.
Cool. Great. Well, thanks
All right,
again,
Karl.
Michael.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Have a great day.